You're watching Taste of Victory.
Welcome back to the channel. The new set is here and it is time to see what is good, what is overhyped, and what is bad in X4. So let's go ahead and start off with some of the new decks introduced in the set, and then we'll go flip and flop between old and new and what has been affected by the most recent ban list update. So let's go ahead and get straight into it. First up, we got the new Alter S deck, which is the cover card of this X4 set. It has two lines introduced in this set between the black Agumon and the black Gabumon lines, evolving into Kreska Rurumon and Blitz Greymon. This deck is just super whatever. The payoff is crazy. It's a really good payoff with the Alter S, I will say. The problem with these level 7 DNA Digivolution decks is that you have to see so many things and so many things have to go right to get your payoff, and either the payoff isn't worth it or you're just not going to get there in time before you lose and you're playing inefficient strategies because you're just trying to work up to a level 7. The thing with this one is they do have some attempt to try and speed it up and facilitate the combo, but you are still nonetheless needing to see a bunch of pieces at the right time together, and it's just a lot to ask in a tournament environment. Heck, even in a locals environment, I think it's a lot to ask to go right because you have so many pieces. They all need to be coming out at the right time. Both your stacks need to survive before they end DNA. It's just a lot to ask for a pretty decent payoff, but other decks just do it so much faster and easier and have just as an explosive of a payoff. So Alter S is going to be the bottom of tier 2 by the end of this tier list. I don't think it's terrible, not terribly awful, but it's just asking a lot for stuff that other decks could do way better and faster. Next up, we got Hunters. Now, Hunters is something that was not directly hit at all by the ban list, but because of other stuff going down a peg, this does get a boost. Its toughest competitor was Beelzemon traditionally, and now that thing has been hit with the X2 Ipmon 2-1. Because of that, it's slowed it down to a more reasonable pace, which lets Hunters compete with it. So because of that, it has gone up a lot, because X4 does not truly change too much as a set. This deck was already fantastic. It now has less stuff to worry about. It's really great for it. So Hunters is still absolutely a tier 1 deck. It just has very efficient answers for multiple decks between the Shoutmon cross effect, the Shoutmon only Shoutmon that lets you delete multiple stuff up to certain DP thresholds, and between Arrestadramon just tucking anything underneath and getting past so much removal. All that while still chipping away, being able to swing without suspending and stuff. It's just such an incredible deck that has only gotten better because one of its worser matchups has gotten more fair. After that, we got Beelzemon, who himself was directly attacked by the ban list. It has been slowed down, as mentioned multiple times in this video, because X2 Ipmon going to 1. However, it's still a very good deck. It is still fast. There are plenty of fantastic cards that you could use to substitute for the missing copies, and if you do hit the one X2 Ipmon that is allowed in the deck, then you just win most of the time anyways. I feel like that card should have absolutely been banned, because now you're just high rolling. It's like if your opponent is a green player and they see hidden potential discovered, you lost to the sack, and it just feels bad. That's what Beelzemon matchups are going to end up being like. It's still a fantastic deck. I think it ends up becoming the bottom of tier 1 after the hit, because it has slowed down to a much more fair pace, but it's still a ridiculously easy to set up payoff, and a really good payoff. After that, we got Alliance. Awesome Terriermon deck. I love Terriermon. I love Gargomon. So this is Black Gargomon line, and also a good line culminating in either good or evil Cherubi and the Black Wicked Gargomon. I honestly don't know why this tier list separate. Usually I make my own, but due to being busy for the past entire week due to personal reasons, I prefer not to delay this video any longer. So yeah, I wouldn't really separate these two. They're the same deck, the same archetype. There's just different ways to take it and build it, and I don't really think either direction that you take is going to be a really big difference in it. It's an okay deck. Yeah, I don't know if I'd put this towards the bottom of tier 2 or the top of tier 3. Unfortunately, yeah, Alliance is just not a very powerful deck. You have an explosive start and then you kind of just struggle to close games out consistently. There's some decks you just can't really get past that are terrible matchups for you, and overall it's just okay. It has a good power level, it has opportunities to steal games, but it just doesn't have very many tools or protections to be able to swing games in your favor if something goes south. So it's just an okay deck. I don't think it's terribly awful, but it's probably somewhere towards the bottom of tier 2 as well. These two are basically the same thing, whichever direction you end up taking it. After that, we got Bloom Lord. So Bloom Lord is a really interesting deck because it has been in the game for a while now, a couple of sets, and it's always been consistently very decent. Now with the ban list taking Beelzemon down a peg, it is really, really good in my opinion, because it's already such a really fast, efficient deck that can quickly climb into a scary boss monster, go incredibly wide, and have consistent official removal with Hydramon. So this deck is so good, and just by the nature alone of Beelzemon being hit on the ban list, it is very efficient. it is very good for it. So it did get a hit here with Blossomon going to 1, so that's another Digisorption card that is gone from the game, or at least, you know, gone to 1, but it's not the end of the world for this deck at all. You have plenty of good stuff that you can substitute, like just more copies of Cherrymon to be more annoying for your opponents. It's still fast, it still goes wide, it still has an insane boss monster payoff. It's just a fantastic card. New support or not, like, it's great, and unfortunately I think it does have a bad matchup into what will end up being the top tiers of this format. We have Beelzemon up there, which you just know just wins everything practically. We have Hunters up there, which has a Omni Shout to answer its wide boards, or Arrested Dramon Superior Mode to tuck the big scary boss monster under something that it can then pop with its minus DP inheritables. And that's before even getting into stuff like Black or Greymon and all that, also having efficient answers to it. So like, it's a great deck, but I feel like it just has too many bad matchups into the top decks of the format. So I can't in all good conscience put it in tier 1, but it's not bad by any means. It's just slightly below them, so we're gonna put it in 1.5. Then we have this little guy here. So this guy's gimmick to make him like even remotely bottom tier 2 playable was that he has a very solid counter into Beelzemon. That lasted for a bit. Beelzemon players adapted. Beelzemon got hit on the ban list, but now you have more of its bad matchups running around because of Beelzemon getting hit like that, giving breathing room to them. So because of that, there's not really much viability in Skull Knightmon, Dark Knightmon, that whole archetype. So we're just gonna put him in tier 3. Then we have All Fours Vigramon, a very solid deck. Like, it's good, but it's fragile. It doesn't have too much removal against certain decks. Like, if they have bounce protection, you're in a really tough spot, and you have to hope to gun them down and win it really fast, or remove something before it goes into that boss monster. With the raising area, that's going to be kind of a hard question. That's going to be kind of a hard task to ask of All Fours Vigramon. So I don't know. It's okay. It's a very solid run-of-the-mill deck that with some more support will be great, because there's a good base there that is playable. After that, we got Galmon. This did get new support in the set, but it's not very good support. It's great that it got more stuff to set off its effects of increasing your opponent's hand count and stuff like that, but like, the payoff is still nothing crazy. The Mock Galgamon is a fantastic addition to be able to give it that extra aggro with the unsuspend on the inheritable, but we need a better top end that we will be getting in the next set, I believe, either BT13 or yes, BT13, where we'll get an update for it, and that's going to make it really good because that will be great support. So this is a good base to start here, but for now it just loses to a lot of the other decks that are way faster than it. Then we have Gallantmon. Gallantmon is getting a new card in Medieval Gallantmon, which is an incredibly mid card. I don't really get the point of this card of returning itself at the end of the turn and like maybe popping something and suspending something when it's played. Like, it's just so mid. And like, I get that's probably something to do with security control, and they don't want to give it too big of a boost by getting this level 6 out for free of hidden security. So I get it. But because of that, it suffers. So yeah, Gallantmon it gets some cool cards. Like, the low-end Guilmon cards are really cool in this set for sure, but they don't really do anything that Guilmon really needs right now. So it's still just like an okay, somewhere in tier 2 deck. After that, we got Machine Dramon. So Machine Dramon is a really scary deck now. It's gotten so much support. People have been teching it out, and with the Beelzemon hit, it is harder than ever for them to put up a fight against this thing, because Beelzemon could absolutely play through Machine Dramon, but it does have a ton of protection that you could slam really early too. And like, yes, that is giving your opponent a ton of memory, but if they don't have an out to it, they don't have an out to it. And if it's early enough, that's just dooming for so many decks. They're just like doomed. So because of that, like, being able to like have such good, hard to remove boss monsters now, able to trash security safely, able to delete stuff, delete tamers. Like, there's a lot this deck can do now, and it can do it at any point in the game, and you need to be ready for it. So it's a fantastic deck, and I am definitely putting this in tier 1. However, it does struggle into Hunters because it just has such efficient removal against it, so it's one of its worser matchups. But good into everything else enough, in my opinion, for it to be tier 1. Then we have a new deck from this format. This is Ravemon. So Ravemon's cool. I've seen the vision. I've done the deck profile with help from my friend Jambo. But yeah, this deck just doesn't have too good support right now. You have to pair this with other generic stuff, like really like mill your opponent, you know, with Megidramon and all that stuff. Like, tech it out for the mill condition. The hand discard isn't going to be anything too crazy. It's just not enough, and it's definitely not fast enough. So this is a good deck. It's definitely playable, and I think you can win locals with it, but it is at the end of the day tier 3 in my opinion. Then we got Red Hybrids. So this is a really cool deck. Like, it's explosive, it's fast, it hits hard, it has really cool inheritables, so it doesn't mind its boss monsters being tucked underneath something else by Hunters. It could keep pace with Hunters. It could keep pace with the new Beelzemon after the ban list. It's a solid deck. Really solid. But Beelzemon be able to quickly and safely trash security, Hunters having a similar speed and also very strong deck, and then Machine Dramon being able to just protect against anything this thing wants to do and never letting you touch its security. All of that is really damning for this deck, but it's really better than everything else below it. So again, this is a case of Bloom Lord where this is a very powerful deck that is so good to being a monster, but its matchups into the best decks in the format are just so struggle bus that I can't in all good conscience put it in tier 1. So we're going to put this in 1.5. It is also kind of like high rolly. Like if you don't open too well, you really have to hope to stabilize immediately within like a turn or two. Otherwise the other top decks will run away with a win. Then we have Shine Greymon. So Shine Greymon does get some new support in the set. Nothing too crazy. You have a cool Greymon, you have a cool Agumon, but you do have Ruin Mode, which is an insane card. However, I think like everything else is going to use it better than Shine. This still has the issue that it did in BT12, where yeah, it's got some great cards and good potential, but not really enough of them to see them consistently enough and have a good explosive payoff. Ruin Mode is again a fantastic card, but I don't think we'll be seeing its true potential until BT14 or BT13. I think it's 13 where we get the support for this deck, and other decks are just going to be using that card better in the meantime. For now, it's just not fast enough and doesn't have good enough payoff, so I'm going to put this somewhere in tier 2. Then we have Black War Greymon, or you could put some Raid War Greymon stuff in there. Generally, the entire Greymon archetype is fantastic. This deck is still super good, man, because the Black War Greymon line just blows up your opponent's field and controls them so efficiently. Raid War Greymon is incredibly annoying and like just absolutely becomes a monster tearing through your board. It's a fantastic deck. It is so efficient, has good protection despite the hits of Black Greymon X. It's just a really powerful, efficient deck that can answer wide boards and answer tamers for hunters. Like, it's great. I'm still putting it in tier 1. We have Reaper next up on the list. D-Reaper is a fun deck. It's funny that it's still there, but it doesn't really do anything. This is a tier 3 deck. There is some fun gimmicks you can do with this with the Alliance deck, because you can put the egg in the Alliance, put it out, and now you have like a level 4 checking for like a billion DP security attack +1. So that's a nice little tech there, but I don't think it's enough to move Reaper up to anything meta relevant. So it's a cool little pet deck for locals. Then we have Crossheart. Solid deck, still very good. I'm going to put this somewhere towards the bottom of 1.5 because its ability to be able to remove stuff while expanding board and quickly out of nowhere set up and start chipping at security. Then we have Yellow Hybrids, which is its own separate little deck from Security Control, as we've seen it topping separately in a couple of the past formats of BT12. So I'm assuming it's going to continue into X4. Security Control is taking a bit of a hit in recent formats with stuff like Beelzebub being able to so quickly and efficiently trash security, and other stuff being able to blow up tamers that these decks rely on for color requirements and stuff like that. So it's a cool little deck. I think I'll be able to compete, as we already saw tops for it in BT12, but I think that is very pilot dependent and being familiar with the deck. So I don't see it having a wide impact on the meta. So we're going to put this somewhere towards tier 2. After that is Green Hybrids. This deck is just like, it's outdated. It needs to be updated for new support with a new format. It's just a tier 3 deck. It's cool and it's efficient, but it doesn't have good ways to close out games, and it's bricky. If you don't see what you need, you have very limited options to search. It's just not good for this format. After that, we got Metal Garurumon X, which is the X antibody Metal Garurumon deck. So this absolutely takes a hit with the ban list. It's still a usable deck, usable core. As we see in BT14, if you guys are keeping up with results for that, the new purple Ace Metal Garurumon is really great support for this deck. So like the core there is still great. It'll still be able to survive without the promo. But for now, in this format, with that card to 1, it's just not doing much of anything. We're gonna have to put this towards the bottom of tier 2. Then we got Armors. Armors actually get some really cool stuff to play with in this set, like Shadow Seraphimon and a couple of new option cards that takes it into a control direction, kind of like Security Control Light with a bit more aggro because of your armor bodies. And even without that, if you don't aggro, you could also play it very defensively and just chip out your opponents while they can't do anything, because you have your giant Magnamon or your Magnamon X, as well as a Shadow Seraphimon, or whatever it's actually called. I believe it's Shadow Seraphimon on the field to constantly be digivolving them. So like, Armors is awesome this set. I don't know if it's enough to put it in 1.5, but it's a very cool deck. I like it a lot. And I think we're definitely putting it at the top of tier 2 bare minimum. But I think depending on how the meta shapes up, this could totally be a 1.5 deck, like maybe even above Crossheart. But for now, I'm going to play it conservatively and see how it ends up doing. Top of tier 2. Kretinous Kuwagamanda. Yeah, this deck's main niche for a couple of sets now has been countering Black War Greymon and stuff like that. But unfortunately, other stuff is doing its job better. It has really bad matchups into stuff like Beelzebub and Hunters. It's just doomed if you get removed. It is a fallen from grace, fellas, let me tell you. Yeah, I think I had to put this towards the top of tier 3. Like, it's a good core. It can compete if you know what you're doing. But like, between all the hits, yeah, it's just It's not doing anything now. I straight up forgot Grand Kuwagamon went to 1. Yeah, this deck is dead. This is bottom of tier 3 for now. You'll see that reflected at the end of this tier list. I forgot to move it during the video. Dorbikmon. Dorbikmon is such a funny deck because, like, on paper it doesn't seem like it should work. I saw people writing this deck off when it was topping stuff, like it was getting into day 2 of Nats and stuff. Like, people were writing this deck off, but it's a good deck. Like, it's funny, but you do have to worry about all the bricking because you kind of see, it's kind of similar to Alter S's problem where I said you have so much stuff you want to see at the same time, but Dorbik is way more generic than Alter S, and just because of that alone, it helps it a lot. You have a really efficient early draw engine in the low end, so that is helpful to also keep up with the consistency. Like, this is better than Alter S. I'm putting this somewhere towards the top of tier 2. This is not a bad deck. I like it a lot. Then we got Examon, solid tier 2 deck, big towers monster that can dodge removal once in a while. It's cool. It has some good matchups into the low tiers. Again, this is something that is somewhere in tier 2. Then we have Blue Flare. Blue Flare is getting some new cards like Gray's Nightmons, hard to say. And then Metal Greymon, a new one in this set. They're cool cards that don't really do anything too revolutionary for the deck. It's not exactly what it needed. Cool to have a little more options to annoy your opponent's board, but it's mostly doing more of the same. So not a bad deck in the slightest, but we're gonna put it somewhere towards the top of tier 2 because the top decks are able to more efficiently answer it. Get your stuff now though, because the stocks are going to rise for BT13 with a deck focused on slamming huge bodies being so popular. Kazukamon. So this has been teched into Blue Flare a lot, but it also is its own standalone deck. As its own standalone deck, this is not enough to stand on its own legs. It's kind of just mid, so that's definitely some tier 3 deck there. But it's a really great tech into Blue Flare. I'm not really sure I would classify this as its own deck. It's just a tech that would go into Black War Greymon, Raid War Greymon decks, like the original Gaiomon card has been for a couple of sets now. So yeah, just whatever tier I put Black War Greymon and Raid War Greymon in represents the same thing. Jesmon, yeah, this deck's dead. Security Control, whatever. It's basically the same issues that Yellow Hybrids run into, except I think it loses a little harder to stuff that like, you know, like Hunters, like Beelzemon. So I'll put it underneath Yellow Hybrids because it at least has Yellow Hybrids is at least a little less one trick than Security Control. So that is going to be the tier list, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is a very interesting set before we get to BT13, which is the really exciting Royal Knight set. I'm looking forward to it. I'm really excited for the set because it does have the Alliance support. Finally, some new Terriermon stuff. Little disappointed it couldn't be better, Bandai. Like, come on, Bandai, give it a good push, but it'll get more support because it is a main character, so that is cool. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you disagree with and what you tier differently. I'll see you guys in the next video, and until then, remember to stay hungry until you get a taste of victory.